Okay, good morning, everybody. Impressed that you've all turned up, especially those in the UK, where I think it's quite late. I'm impressed that I turned up this morning. Had quite the day yesterday, and then awake for a lot of the night for some reason. High energy, and now the energy's just come whoom. And it's a grey, overcast day here, as you can probably see, and got some gentle rain and some singing birds for you, and a nun who just feels quite pensive this morning, if that's the right word. So this is all good, though. I was just sitting for a little while before we started just to reflect on these changing landscapes. Yesterday was a little sunny and calm, a bit brighter. Today it's, at least the wind stopped, it's calmer, and drizzly, as they say, drizzly. And it's the same with our minds and our mind states, isn't it? Just knowing these changing moods. Yesterday we had quite a bit on, a lot of engagement, high energy, a bit of necessary planning for significant events. You got to engage with so many different things, and fortunately the energy was there to do that. And then that's quite, sometimes for me anyway, don't know for people out there, it's a little tricky to come down from that and just go to sleep sometimes. You've just got to wait till these winds and these energies settle. And this morning I wake up just feeling like everything's settled, but nothing's rising much. So it'll be interesting to see how we go in the meditation. But before we do that, I'm assuming everyone's able to hear and see me. When we have this these overcast days, sometimes the connection's a bit patchy. Okay, so everyone's from all over the world as usual, which is, if you're reading the chat like me, you can see we have a global Sangha here, which is wonderful. And the first question's already come in. Someone's keen to get in their question. Something about, I haven't got my glasses yet, something about samskaras, telling us about ourselves. That's a good place to start, this question of this self that we take ourselves for, this entity that we think we are, this permanent sense of ourselves as some sort of identity. But like I've just said, there's nothing about it that is stable. You think you have this image of yourself as one way, and the next day the whole landscape internally is changed, externally is changed, and we're just part of this ever changing inner and outer landscape. So how do you do with that? Do you try and grasp onto something that doesn't change? Like, this is me, well, this is the weather and it doesn't change. I want it always to be sunny. I want to always be up and bright, energetic, and then it changes and you feel pensive and calmer. I want it to be like that always. That's my preference, right? And it just keeps changing. All these mind states keep changing. The moods keep changing. Bodily sensations keep changing. Everything's changing. Our physical appearance keeps changing. We can see it over the years, but it's changing every day, all these cells. So how do we deal with this constant change when we can't find a permanent, unchanging self? So this is our practice, and let's go into that. So if you're in here already, just let's leave the chat alone so we can come into meditation. And some people might come late and start saying something in the chat, but we can just turn our eyes away from it. So get yourself into a comfortable seated position if you're able to physically sit cross-legged. That's very helpful. And start to draw the attention into a more cohesive fashion, forgetting about the objects outside, even me as an object. No need to focus on me. You can just let my voice come and go as a sound that provides some sort of pointers to looking. Just ensure that your body is comfortable and upright. Your back and spine is supported. But the most important posture is to relax. So finding that delicate balance between maintaining an upright position, an alert position, but also finding that sweet spot of relaxation with meditation. So if you're finding that you're very tense in meditation, then you need to just check what's going on. You need to just relax into it. Moving away from this I making, my making with meditation. I'm going to do it. I'm going to get it. I'm going to stop the thinking and make it blissful. Just relax all of that. There's nothing to get, and there's no one to get anything. There's just a constant letting go. Of emptying out in meditation. So as you turn the attention more inwardly focused, whether you keep the eyes open or closed, it doesn't matter. Whatever practice you're doing, you can still look with the inner eye. And as you start to look and start to settle, just begin to notice what it is, where it is that you're grasping. And there's bound to be something. And this grasping activity or tendency often comes with the feeling of pushing and pulling. I want this, I don't want that. And it can be very obvious sometimes, but it can also be very subtle. So we'll just spend a few quiet moments looking at that pattern, how it might be manifesting. And you can hold the question in mind as an aid. It's simply, what am I holding on to right now? What am I resisting? And if you can start to notice and see this pattern within yourself, just the very seeing, just the very knowing affects a letting go. And just notice, start to become quite clued in to what happens, the process. Each time you inquire with an open, honest mind, and then look with a non-judgmental mind, and just see what the process is that unfolds. For you. What am I holding on to right now? Where and what am I resisting? If there's a holding on, a grasping, it'll come with a corresponding tension or tightness somewhere in the body. The tight fist, the tense shoulder or neck, a contorted gut. And similarly, if there's a resisting, a pushing away of some mental state, emotional state, or physical state, the body will reflect that in tightness, in tension. So we start to become more and more sensitive to this patterning, this habitual clinging and pushing away in meditation. And just breathe into it when you notice it. Not in an effort to get rid of it, but just as a way of opening and softening around it. But let it all come, let it all go. Just open to it. Like you might be able to open and listen to the sounds of the raindrops, the sounds of the birds, the sound of my voice coming and going. Don't resist anything. Don't hold on to anything. Everything's just coming and dissolving. So just relax and float and flow with all these changing landscapes. It's not that one is better and one is worse. It's our preferencing for one over the other that causes the suffering. Because you should be able to see clearly in your meditation that everything is constantly changing, morphing, transforming. What can you possibly hold on to? And if you just take a Dharma seat, your seat as the Buddha, as the one who knows, without preferencing or holding on or pushing away. There's no problem. It's actually quite peaceful. Because we know. We just know the changing phenomena. We know its nature is to change constantly. And if it is the nature of something to constantly change, then there's no problem. That is its nature. It can't be any other way. And this view or this perception, this idea that you have about yourself, of who you are or what you are, can you investigate that too? Can you find a fixed, unchanging me? Are you creating an idea of it in your head, a concept of me? And again, you can hold an inquiry question. Who do I think I am? or just who am I, which is the classic question. And it's a powerful question, a useful question, because it reveals so many assumptions and beliefs and views and opinions. So as you look into this question of who you think you are, do you notice that it mainly consists of ideas and thoughts, which in and of themselves are completely insubstantial, changing and empty? There's just another thing to let go of. These clinging and views and grasping of me. This is me. This is not me. They're all just ideas. Dream ideas. We're constantly dreaming ourselves into some existence, or wishing ourselves out of some existence. But without all these ideas and dreams, what do you find? What do you see within? Once all the dust of these ideas and thoughts start to settle, perhaps you may get a glimpse, an inkling, or even just an intuitive sense of the space between this torrent of thoughts and reactions. of views and opinions. The space inside, the space outside, the same space. See if you can start to attune to space itself. Which is not really something that you can objectify unless you make it into an object and start to cling to it. Rather just know, become aware and mindful of the space. Between each dream idea and if you're meditating with your eyes open, just know the space outside. Between each object, surrounding each object. Or even just gazing into the vast, infinite space of the sky. It's all just space. The space in the mind is as vast and infinite as the sky that you can see. But at the moment it may be clouded and cluttered with a constant stream of thoughts, worries, views and opinions. But that's no problem, because they're all just rising, emerging from this space, and then dissolving and breaking down again into the same space. So recognize this space. And rest and relax into the space. But don't space out. Let the knowing still be clear and awake. Don't become diffusive. Let there be the emptiness and vastness of space within your mind, within your body, such that it merges with the entire space outside, so called. But yet the knowing is still bright. So it's like a bright sun shining in the sky. The sun is your awareness, your wakefulness. And the sky is the nature of all phenomena. The vast empty space. Where you don't need to hold on or push away anything. Just be the sun, be the space. Recognizing the nature of reality is both empty and cognizant. It's not a nothingness. It's not a blank void. The brightness of the sun simply knows and is awake. And yet, not separate from this vast space. So as we bring this more formal meditation period to a close, it's an opportunity to ask questions, or even particularly if there's issues that arose from some of those instructions, it's a good opportunity to clarify or share. But nothing's really changing as we move from so-called meditation to whatever it is that we're going to do now. It's just changing appearances. Perhaps more clutter, more words, more visuals. So this can take us out of this awareness of the vast empty space, but it doesn't have to. We just notice there's more conditions and appearances, and yet the background of space remains untouched, unaffected. So you can have that constant remembrance going, and you should, as part of your meditation. It's just a different landscape, changing landscape, and you can still stay aware and connected to the ground of your being. And so just stretch and breathe as you need to, and I'll see whatever questions we might be able to address. I think there was one earlier on before we started that seems to have disappeared. Oh no, there it is. So back up the top, it says what to do if and when we are hypersensitive to the projections of samskaras. So those who aren't aware, samskaras are just impressions, mental impressions in the mind, phenomena. What is this telling us about ourselves, assuming that it stems from not being centered, correct? So the question, so what do you do if you're hypersensitive? Well, the thing is, we're all hypersensitive to some extent. We're all sensitive human beings with a lot of conditioning, different conditioning. And we all have reactions and responses to different samskaras, whether they be mental impressions or physical manifestations of things that come into the 6 sense doors: hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, touching, and thinking. And the practice is to just notice. I mean, there was nothing in that meditation that asked you to do or get rid of anything. If you're calling yourself hypersensitive, that can mean 2 things: that you're really aware, which is great, and it could be both. Hypersensitive means you're very reactive. Don't like it. I'm too sensitive for this world. Have to get rid of it. And that causes a lot of suffering. But so does not being aware of anything either. That often causes suffering for other people because there's no sensitivity. So you use your sensitivity as a strength. If you're hypersensitive to how you're reacting to things, then I guess you need to build a little bit of resilience, more resilience. And that doesn't mean a shell where you armor yourself against the things that impact us or come in and hit the heart or hit the body. But we have to, and I'm going to have to talk very generally here because I don't know what you're hypersensitive to, but you have to know for yourself if, for example, you're hypersensitive to, we'll say, noise, right? You can't stand the noise of the city, or if you live in the country, it might be jackhammers or chainsaws or barking dogs. You have to know that that's something that sets you off or triggers you. And you have to know what you're able to deal with, your limits. So there might be a time where you need to just move away from those sensory inputs, because all you find yourself doing is reacting or getting sick. And build your resilience without blaming the external stimuli, and then gradually reintroduce those things, because they're part of the world, right? If it's people or sounds or smells or whatever it is, because you can't live in a bubble. I mean, there are cases of people that are so sensitive they had to live in the bubble, right? And that probably also has a medical issue to it. So I'm not criticizing that. But if it's just our conditioning that's not liking certain things and wanting to get rid of it, we need to take responsibility for it and learn to build resilience and skillful means. So I'm not suggesting you just flood yourself with those things that trigger you, but just, it's like if it's raining, you put an umbrella up until the rain stops. And then next time it's raining, it's not a big deal. You get a bit wet, but you can deal with that. That's not a great example, but I think you know what I mean. Just look at what it is that you're reacting to or pushing away, and experiment. How much of it can I take, Because if you take too much of things you're reacting to, you just get overwhelmed or completely traumatized. But if you're just trying to shut the world out, you'll never build resilience or wisdom. So a little bit, homeopathic doses, perhaps, to whatever it is you're reacting to. But it's a little tricky. I mean, that's a general thing that you're talking about, but we all have reactions to these sense impressions in the world, and we can all learn from that and see what it is. It'll all be individual. So I'm just going to scroll down now and see if I can find another question. And if you can keep the chat limited to questions, that would be helpful, because then I can find them. Okay. Oh, now all the questions have appeared. Okay. So Jenny's asked, according to your learning, what is the true Dharma that's spoken of? Well, this is a tricky question, because if we think we have the true Dharma, then it's not really the true Dharma. Anything that we're holding on to, if we have an opinion that this is the right Dharma, then it's the wrong Dharma. So the Dharma is that which is neither true nor false. It just is the way it is. We come up with the idea of true and false, right and wrong, high and low. But the Dharma is just the Dharma, which means it's the nature of reality. You can talk about one Dharma, which is true and undebatable, and no one needs to claim it as their own religion or anything, is that everything is constantly changing, right? I guess we could say that the true Dharma is what the Buddha referred to as the three characteristics of existence. And if anyone can prove otherwise, go ahead. But you tell me if any of these things aren't true. The first is the truth of anicca, impermanence. Every phenomena that you see, hear, smell, taste, perceive is constantly changing. That is the nature of phenomena, the conditioned world. The other truth is that within these phenomena, whether they be this body or mind or something outside, there's no fixed, unchanging essence or self, right? that is the Dharma, that is the nature of phenomena. There's no thing that's fixed, entity, unchanging, permanent. And the third is that when we cling to these things, when we don't see the truth of the way things are, we suffer. And so these phenomena, because we cling to them as permanent, there's a subtle clinging, this is permanent and this is me. They're inherently, they're not satisfactory. There's this inherent unsatisfactory to them when we cling to them in that way, and we do. So you could say that they're the three characteristics of existence that the Buddha talked about, which is true. But that's the characteristics of the conditioned realm. But the Buddha also talked about, and so do all the masters, about the unconditioned, that which is not separate from the conditioned. It's inherent in it, but it's untouched by changing circumstances. And some people would say this is the true Dharma, the unconditioned reality, the ground of being, the essence of the absolute. But if you start going around saying this is the true Dharma, this is the true Dharma, this unconditioned, then it's no longer the true Dharma. It's just another view and opinion, and people cling to that. I like Ramana Maharshi perhaps had the true Dharma, which was just to keep silent. So things beyond words are perhaps truer. But then if you cling to silence and start to make that a thing, then it's no longer the true Dharma either. And if you insist everyone be silent, it's tricky. It's tricky, Jenny, whenever we start clinging to things as supreme or highest or anything. Okay, so underneath you, someone said that they could sense the vast space within. That's great. That's where this is all pointing. So when you sense that vast space, or be the space, because you are the space, we are, that's, you could say that is our true nature. Don't cling to that. All these questions and confusions dissolve because we see it. Everything's just arising and ceasing from this vast space. And that is the Dharma. That is the truth. So, question below. How does one attain freedom? Push through with the practice? ? Stop this division from awake and sleep. Remain anchored in this knowing you speak of. Yeah, but there's no pushing through with the practice. If there's pushing, in that very moment, there's aversion, there's not liking. Does that feel free? I mean, the only way to attain freedom, and the only time to attain freedom, is right now. There's no other time to wake up, because the future doesn't exist except in an idea we have. So you're saying remain anchored in the knowing. That's where freedom lies. And not as an idea, not as something that you've read or heard some great master say, but as your own immediate experience, that you anchor yourself in this knowing where everything is let go of. All ideas about yourself and the world, about what's right and wrong, good or bad, true Dharma, false Dharma, all of that just dissolves in the space, and you just remain in the knowing without some idea of yourself as the knower. And therein lies freedom, in that very moment. It really is as simple as that. But then we add on, and when we move away and we start, getting all ideas about freedom or enlightenment, or what I have to do, what I don't have to do, who's awake, who's not awake, rada. And it's just more of the same samsaric delusion. So Jennifer shared, I can't believe I get to meditate with people from all over the world, and Jayasara while cuddling in bed with my dog. Oh, hello, doggy. And Jennifer. Wow, life is amazing. Well, I hope you both enjoyed just being, and sending much love to you and your doggy. Okay. Okay, Ethan's asking, in the guidance, you use the word cognizant to describe emptiness. Can you explain the use of this word? I didn't so much use cognizance to describe emptiness, even though cognizance in and of itself is emptiness. What I tried to point out is that when one rests in the spacious openness of mind, just say, people sometimes get scared and think, oh, there's nothing there, it's all empty, and they lean into nihilism. There's nothing there. But what I was trying to point to is that that's not true, because there's a knowing of that. There's a cognizance. Like I use the metaphor of the cognizance as being the sun in the sky. You know without knowing anything, in the usual sense of the word of knowing. You're just the Buddha knowing the Dharma, right? So there's a knowing nature of the mind, which, yes, is empty in and of itself, but it's not a blank void of nothingness. At the same time, it is no thing, but this is where words just, they really do fail. But it's all we got to communicate at one level, unless we just keep silent, which is probably better. But anyway, you're asking me a question. So this cognizance, your knowing nature, your bright sun of awareness, it's not a thing, is it? If you've recognized it, it's not a thing that you can pull out of your head, if you have a sense of it in your head or your heart, and go, this is my cognizant nature. So in and of itself, it's substanceless, it's empty, but it's not a blank, black, nothing, empty, blah, which people can often fall into. And that's where we lean into nihilism. There's absolutely nothing, right? When you die, it all goes black and blank, and there's nothing there. But this cognizant nature, this Buddha nature, is something that, we've got to be mindful of, but also careful about not grasping as a phenomena or anything either, because it transcends all of that. And yet it is. And that's why the Buddha didn't say too much, because he knew people like to grasp and argue and debate and think that they've got it, or they have the best sect, best form of Buddhism, or the best form of some other religion. They've got the real Dharma, the real understanding of emptiness. So he kept quiet a lot about the unconditioned, because he knew how we are, how humans are. But he never said it all leans into nothingness. People would often, and still do, misinterpret Buddhism as that. It's quite nihilistic, and it's not. What can you do? You're always dealing with the limitations of people's minds and thinking. And until you know for yourself what this cognizant empty nature is of the mind, we call it the mind, or of reality, then it's best to keep quiet. And even if you do know it, it's best to keep quiet anyway. Because if you really know it, it's got nothing to do with words or religion or some guru presentation or anything like that. Okay, so below you there's a question. When I ask, who am I find three answers. The answers are the silence behind all existence, the ego mind trying to block that silence, and the watcher seeing all this. Is this the constant condition in this life? Yeah, it is. But also to bear in mind that question, who am I? It's not actually intended to find any answers. So these answers, you have to let go of those, because then they just become more ideas. And you might one day you think, oh, that's a great answer. I found the answer. It's a bit like a koan. There's no answer to koans. The whole point of the inquiry, who am I, or the sound of one hand clapping, or does a dog have Buddha nature? The whole point is to disable the thinking mind and to lead you into a state of non-conceptual awareness. So those answers, they sound good, but they're not really the answer, because they're just more words, more ideas. And, if you've got three answers one week, next month you might have another three answers. So you can see these answers are just of the nature to keep changing anyway. And if you hold on to them as the ultimate answer, you'll find that you can't hold on to them either. So who am I, or what do I think I am, is just about looking, without looking for some conceptual, intellectual right answer. Just to point you towards that, like you say, the silence behind all existence. So can you go from the silence behind all existence that is an answer that you hold as the right answer? And I'm not necessarily saying you're doing this, but this is for everybody. So can you move from that silence behind all existence as the answer to being the silence behind all existence? And in that silence behind all existence, it's not an answer anymore. Because an answer implies right and wrong, doesn't it? The silence, the true silence behind all existence, is just the way things are. So if you've really found that, and it's not just an intellectual answer, you found it in your heart, then stay there and let that provide you with all the true answers, because you're not going to find the answers from me or from another teacher or from a book, from a lecture, from a podcast. The answers which come from the silence, sometimes you'll never be able to put them into words. And then you know they're the right answer. This is the paradox of all of this. Because we're so addicted and convinced by concepts and words. All right, moving down to the EV. You mentioned that just seeing the patterns within myself affects the patterns. If I am aware of seeing a resistance to a current situation, will that affect a change to the pattern of resistance? Absolutely. That's all it is, just knowing. But if there's knowing and, I've got to know in order to get rid of it, and you start using this pure knowing nature as some sort of idea or antidote, or another technique to get rid of problems in my life, then it's not it, is it? So it has to be this sort of unconditional pure knowing that's not judging and subtly trying to push away things like, if I just know it, I'll get rid of it. Because that's not knowing, that's liking and disliking, wanting to be in charge, having expectations. But the pure knowing, the pure awareness, believe it or not, we've all got this very old, wise sage within us that is not invested in anything. It's just this nature that knows and is actually deeply compassionate. But it's not like the compassion we all think of. Oh, you poor thing, I've got to help you come out of your resistance. You poor thing, you're suffering. The knowing nature is and of itself unconditional, non-judgmental, and deeply compassionate. You can call it the wise sage within you. So you have to get in tune with that. And if you really see it from that space of wisdom, just trust it, let go. Don't worry about, is this knowing going to get rid of it? If I do it, will I get rid of it? Don't worry. If it's really knowing, it changes of itself in its own time and its own way. You really do have to surrender to it unconditionally. Yeah. In order for it to be, authentic. So, I've just lost the person below you. This thing has a mind of its own. Trust the path. I'm an experienced meditator. I'd like to lead meditations for a group, but shifting from meditating myself to leading is difficult. Coming up with words, relaxing in this role, any practical advice? Yeah, I mean, why do you want to lead meditations for? I'd look into that motivation. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen, and then words come. When we teach the meditation here on our sessions, there's no script, there's no plan. Maybe I have a vague idea sometimes. Let's talk about, I don't know, space like I did today, although I had a vague idea I might talk about space. But there's no planning, there's no expectations. What I might have said might have hit the mark and may not have hit the mark. Might have been gobbledygook to a lot of people. But, it's gone now, and it might have helped some people see something. But I'd be questioning why you think that you would like to lead meditations for a group. What's going on there? And then, there's something within you that's saying it's difficult. You have an idea that you want it to be a certain way. You have to be a certain type of meditation teacher. Look at all this. Because if you're meant to be teaching, it'll just happen. Let go of all this contrivance, all these ideas that it's difficult, or for some people they think it's easy. It just is what it is. All right, Alex. I think it's a good example. I've distanced myself from people that tried to hurt me, and the next time they did the same thing, it didn't affect me as much. Does that relate to something else, Alex? I'm lost. I don't know. I'm not sure what that's a statement. I'll take that as a statement. Ezra, psychoanalytical psychotherapy, how important is it to have it along or parallel to meditation practice to integrate contextually what happens deep in your unconscious during meditation practice? I don't know. It's like, I'm not going to say it's important or not important. For some people, it might be what they feel they need to do to integrate early trauma. For other people, it may not be the case. They're working at it, integrating it in different ways, whether it's through meditation practice or just life and service and having relationship. So, yeah, there's no kind of strong view from me whether it's important or not important. I think perhaps, though, if meditation is being used as a way to zone out or to, what's the word? disconnect. There's another word that's not coming at the moment. Disassociate from some, early traumatic experiences and things that are playing themselves out in our emotional landscape. And we use meditation just as a way to zone out, to get into some states or just fall asleep. Then it's not healthy meditation. We've got to look at it. But the thing about meditation, there's really no escape. Things will come up in your meditation practice to look at, the shadow stuff. And whether or not you have the skills to deal with it, some people don't, some people do. Depends how much wisdom and guidance and support there is, both from teachers and from within. And that's when having a psychotherapist to help you integrate those emotional patterns, which we all have, by the way. It's not like there's some group of traumatized people that need to do psychotherapy. We're all traumatized just from being born. But it just depends on the level of these intensities of these traumas, and how much we've integrated what's called the shadow stuff. In Buddhism, you can just say it's the greed, hatred, and delusion, the liking, not liking, the reactivity. And whether you want to blame it on an external event that happened, it all does come back to our own inner way of dealing with and responding to those events. But it all happens within here. It could be the right ticket for a period of time for some people. Absolutely. Or not. There you go. Can't hold on to any of those answers. From Renee, question. My husband is in hospice and I'm keeping him company until the end. Beautiful. Is there anything I ought to be doing? Thank you. Well, I think you've said it. You're keeping him company to the end. So you're being present for him, Renee. And that's all you can do. And when I say that's all you can do, it's the best you can do, I should say. So, if you're practicing and you're just being a support from a place of allowing and acceptance and surrender. So you've got to do the work within yourself. He's doing his own work within himself. All different emotional responses will be coming up and changing. You don't want him to go. You're going to miss him, the fear, everything that's natural to losing a loved one and someone so close to you. Can you just be with that and not deny it? Not say, I shouldn't be feeling this way. I'm a seasoned meditator or something. So just being open to the sadness, the grief, the fear. But at the same time, there will be moments of peace, of letting go. So look for those too, because it's not dying. Death and dying is not one, it's not black and white. It's not like it's bad, that birth is good and dying's bad. So, for a lot of wise people, dying can be a very beautiful thing, and birth can be, seen for what it is, which is the beginning of suffering and struggle. So, you can ask your questions about, is this body form that's deteriorating in front of you? Is this really your husband? I mean, this was a body that this idea of the husband with the name has composite we've created. John, we'll call him John. Is that really who John is? This body that was born and was like all our bodies, heading in one direction only. Am I really losing John, my husband? And to tune into that within yourself. I'm not going to give you an answer because you know the answer. Deep down, you know the answer, that nothing was really born and nothing really dies. There's just the appearances that come and go. That's the nature of the phenomenal world, the nature of these bodies. So if you can tune in to the peace beyond, the tranquility, the trust that's deep down within your heart and within your husband, and cultivate that, which is, you could just say it's a deep trust in not knowing, not perceiving all these forms, but a deep trust in something else. And sit there with him, particularly towards the end when he's perhaps not speaking, not seemingly conscious, but he is still present. There's consciousness there, but not the kind of mental consciousness. That will communicate a lot, a real lot. And there's also a playlist on my channel here called Death and Dying. It's a Death and Dying playlist. And some of those teachings might be helpful for you to listen to, for him to listen to. But, you don't want to also create a whole lot of new sets of concepts at the dying moment. You just want to cultivate a field of peace and silence and trust in the midst of things that are coming. Fears, anxieties, grief, sadness, anger. Why is he dying? It's not fair. Why am I going to be left alone? It's not fair. Just let all that come up in this vast empty field and cultivate the empty field. Don't cultivate all these reactions, but don't suppress them either. It's very important during times of death and dying, because this is what we do in the West. We suppress a lot of the fear and the grief because we're so terrified of death. It's kept hidden from us. When I used to work in a hospice, it was a good hospice, but still, when someone died, it was like, quick, no one's looking, take the dead body out. It's like, man, God, it's complete opposite to India at the Ghats, where the dead bodies are out there and everyone can go and watch them being burnt. But in the West, it's so clinical. Quick, get the dead body, put the sheet over the head so no one sees who it is, and don't want to distress the other people who are all dying. It's just down to the cold mortuary in the basement. It's charming, isn't it? But that's how we deal with it in the West. It's so clinical and so pushed away, so denied. So open to that. You might not be able to change the hospital practices, but you can change the way that you're responding to death and dying. The thing is, it's not a problem. It's not, he hasn't failed. Everyone's supposed to die. It's the only way to go. So it's not that something's gone wrong. It's just your husband's dying, and soon he will be free from this mortal coil, as they say. But he's not really going anywhere. Okay. So Alex below has answered, do our personal meditations and prayers have a positive effect on a global or even cosmic scale? Yeah, how can they not? We have this idea that we're here and then there's the global cosmic scale. But, we are the global, we're not separate from the global cosmic scale. So if you think of it as when you throw a little stone in a lake, a tiny little stone in a lake, there's a ripple, because that little stone, goes into the lake and it's part of it, becomes part of the lake. Now it sinks to the bottom. So it can't but have an effect, because it's not like we're separate from everything else. We're just another form bouncing around in space, but we're not separate from the space or the globe or the cosmos. So everything in science, they've got this butterfly effect theory, haven't they, which you can look up. So everything that's done on one side of the world can have an effect on things on other sides of the world. What's that monkey one? I can't, it was a long time ago when I read it, but they teach monkeys something in one part of the world, you know, they introduce them to something or some new skill that they develop, and then they notice that in another part of the world, millions of miles away, that monkey has now learnt it because there's some sort of connection, DNA, I suppose, a connection going on, species connection. Fascinating. So the more people who wake up, the more and practice, the more it'll probably bound to have an effect on everybody. Okay. Ginger Roof. Why does clinging make it not the truth? What's the difference between clinging and belief and faith? I think you're referring to what I said before. When we cling, it's the truth of clinging. But I think what you're saying is, I talked about when we kind of have this idea that the nature of reality is this way, and we cling to that as the truth, then all it is more clinging, because truth is free from any notions, any clinging, anything that's a concept. So that's what I meant by that. And what's the difference between clinging and belief and faith? Sometimes not much, but one can have faith without clinging, right? And one can, believe it or not, have a belief sometimes without clinging. Often beliefs are beliefs because we cling to them. But faith might just be, look, I don't know how it's going to work out. Let's just say the example of watching our husband die. We don't really see deeply into the nature of reality. We don't really understand that everything's okay. But there's something within us as a faith that trusts that. But we don't cling to it. We're just kind of willing to flow. That's what, if you think about the stream, a current of the river, if there's faith, we just flow with that. We don't know where it's going, but we just flow. When there's clinging, we hold on tightly to the to a rock or to a big stick, and we hold for, I don't want to flow. I don't want to go this way. This is the way it is. I have to stay here. You know, that's clinging, and that causes suffering for ourselves. And belief often comes in where I believe, and I'm not going to. If it's fundamentalist belief, then no one can change my mind because I'm clinging to the belief that this is the way it is. But beliefs can always be challenged, and they should be, if it's just a belief. But faith doesn't really cling. Faith doesn't really know necessarily. That's why it's faith. But if it's blind faith and we follow the guru to the end of the world and jump off the cliff with him or swallow the poison, that's just blind faith. So it's subtle. We have to know it for ourselves. What's wise faith? Okay, just a few more questions because I have to go to another event. Sati. So why go to some monastery and surround yourself with favorable ambience, with pleasant and peaceful nature? That's a question. Just remain super sensitive in the middle of the noisy and dirty center of the city, full of forgot to finish the sentence. Oh, I lost it. There it is. So Sati's asking, why would we go to the monastery? Just remain super sensitive in the middle of the noisy and dirty city. Depends. It really depends. Often people go to the monastery to build up their resilience because they're favourable conditions for developing samadhi and insight, and such that when they come out to the city, depending on their level of practice, if they've really practiced, then there's no difference between the monastery and the city. It's all just phenomena. Some is what we call pleasant, and some is dirty and noisy. So that's the real practitioner. But most practitioners can't just have this equipoise at the beginning, because noise and dirt and defilement pulls us in. We get pulled into it or reactive to it. So having favourable conditions when we're beginning the practice is really good. And the Buddha encouraged this. He told his monks and eventually nuns to go to a quiet place at the root of a tree and practice there, because he knew that, if you're trying to do that in the city, there's lots of really interesting things and lustful things, exciting things to get drawn into. So you go there and develop strength of mind and wisdom. And then, like the Buddha did, he went everywhere. He traveled around to big cities, to quiet places, but it was all just the same, because he had transcended this liking and disliking in relation to phenomena in the phenomenal world. But let's not kid ourselves. When you start practicing, you don't have a mind that has equal taste. So, like I said, if it's raining, you use an umbrella. Why just stand there getting saturated and drenched? So we have to be kind of a bit, savvy, a bit sensible, and use skillful means. Jimmy's asking how to shut up the thoughts. Well, if you go back to that meditation, there's no kind of encouragement for you to shut up the thoughts. It's just to open to the thoughts, look at the thoughts, investigate. Because when you shine the light of awareness on thoughts, they can't just run here and there, right? Because if there's mindfulness, the thoughts are like, oh, you scared little rabbit, you've seen me. So just keep looking at the thoughts, but two things, don't identify that you are your thoughts. This is who and what I am. And don't get into some big argy-bargy with them, because the more you try to repress them and fight them or shut them up, the stronger they get. So just like chill, relax. Oh, there's thinking. What's the thinking? What's going on here in this crazy mind? So mindfulness is the key for things to settle. Just wake up. So there's a few words with not much context, so I'm just going to move past those. And requests, I'm going to move past those till I find a question. How does one know which instinct to follow to do action? Shall I follow this type of hunger versus not that type? Instinct, huh? So I have to contemplate this question. How does one know which instinct to follow to do an action? Shall I follow this type of hunger versus not that type? Well, the best thing to do is to ask yourself, who is this one who thinks they're doing? Who is the doer? This hunger. Look at I don't know what this hunger is. What are we hungering for all the time? And is it a peaceful state to have this hunger, this wanting? And I'm not saying just be a vegetable and do nothing, but start to really investigate this notion that I've got to do it. I've got to find out what my hunger, what my ambition is. This creates a new sense of a self, of a doer. Whereas this is about really unpacking this notion that there's a me here who's doing everything, who's wanting, or the wanter. And when we kind of rest more into a non-action, and again coming back to kind of resting and faith and allowing things to unfold organically and naturally, often it's much more peaceful. And the other thing is that often we're led in the right direction, in a more harmonious direction. When we're kind of feel like we're holding the steering wheel, driving really tight through life, I've got to make sure I control everything and get rid of everything I don't like or people I don't like, make sure the path is nice and smooth, clenching the steering wheel. I'm the doer, I've got to make it happen. I'm hungry for this experience. It's just dukkha. It's just like, it's tight and tense, isn't it? But when you kind of get one of those self-driving cars, you can just, I'm not recommending them, I'm just using them as a metaphor. You can just sit back and let the car drive you, because you recognize there's no one here really driving it. It's just action. But there's a wakefulness, and you kind of, even if you feel like you're kind of gently steering the car from a gentle space, you're not really doing it. There's no one there doing it. It's just action happening without a doer. So that may make no sense to you at all, Doshi, but it might one day. Does my meditation benefit my pets? Of course it does. But the question is, the pets benefit your meditation. We had a most beloved cat, and she was our bestest teacher. And she just taught, that we can relax, really deeply relax. And she would just sit like a lot of cats and just be. She didn't have an agenda. She was hungry sometimes, but she wasn't always driven by that hunger. It's just when she needed to eat, she ate. So look at your pets as your teacher. Don't think that your meditation is necessarily going to benefit them, although it will. But see how you're both in a lovely relationship. And they will like you more when you're calmer. And when you settle, they'll settle. Especially cats, they'll come and sit on your lap sometimes when you're meditating. They love the stillness and the silence. Okay, I'm just going to take 2 more questions from someone who hasn't asked, and then I'll need to wrap up, folks. Do you like to entertain funny or interesting theories such as aliens or cosmology, or do you try to avoid thinking too deeply about such things? Yeah, I don't think much about it. Naturally, it doesn't come up. I don't go looking for it. It's, a bit of a distraction. Ginger's asked, so I'll just see. Connecting with unfiltered awareness. I fear my memory, recall, and social skills could get worse. No. Have you had similar concerns or not really? No, it's the opposite. It's the opposite, Eric, because, you're resting the mind. This is what we're trying to do. We get into a place where meditation's not really meditation anymore. It's non-meditation, because it becomes just a natural state to rest the mind. And so then you find that a lot of the fears around social skills, they just kind of drop off like an old scab. And memory actually gets better because there's more space in the mind. If you're constantly trying to think and engage in conceptual things or things on a computer, or I don't know what everything people do in life, it's a real stress for the mind, the brain. So it's sensory overload, brain overload. So when you just rest in unfiltered awareness, it's much more spacious. And the memory you need to recall will be there. But a lot of stuff we recall in memory is just clutter. It's you can have a spring clean for the mind, can't you? Because we don't need to remember everything, all the inane details. But the real stuff that we need to know, which hopefully is wisdom, that'll get clearer. All right, so I'm going to have to leave it there. As I said, folks, I've got another engagement that I need to attend, a meditation engagement. So I hope some of those questions and the meditation itself, which you can always go back and revisit, recap, was helpful. And in 3 weeks' time, Jitindra will be leading the session. And I hope you can all attend for that too. We're getting towards the end of the year, aren't we? Gosh, time flies. That's what happens. We're getting older. Hopefully we're getting wiser. And the years and the days are passing. One of the reflections we have in our monastic practice, which I find always very powerful, it's part of a chanting. It says, "The days and nights are relentlessly passing. How well am I spending my time?" So on that note, I'll leave you to all ponder that. How well are you spending your time? And if the time is spent just learning to cultivate wisdom and awareness and letting go of all this dream nonsense and escape, then you're spending your time wisely. So on that note, I'll love you and leave you, and go well in the world that we create in our mind. Okay, how do I end it? There we go. Okay, bye, folks.